So this is a little bit different for me. So bear with me today. Yes. So my name is Gina Lovato. You know me as the Love Addict coach. You probably saw my videos on TikTok, which is super amazing. I've been a coach. I was a coach before I started posting stuff on TikTok. And I just started posting stuff this year. And I was honestly, I'm going to talk about it later, but oh, Instagram, cool. I was really, really scared to post. I have to be honest about that. And so it's been a really, really cool experience that people have responded well. And I'm like super appreciating it. And I really hope that people hear something that resonates with them, because that's really why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because I really want to help people. And I really feel like I found a solution, and I want to share that with people. And I feel really lucky that I get to share that with people. So let me tell you a little bit about my professional background. I am a private coach. I work with people privately on Zoom, sort of wherever they're at, whether we're doing some self-discovery work or whether we are in the dating realm, sort of coaching as they're going through. And I also offer group classes right now that are super fun, which I'll talk about a little bit more later as well. Right now we have mindful dating, and we have healthy relationships. And right now it's only open for women and non-binary, but they're super fun. And we talk a lot about how to actually do the solutions that we're gonna talk about today. So I'm gonna give you an introduction to them today, but those classes are a really good way to actually get into the work and to sort of be guided through it, and to have a community of people that are doing the same things that you're doing. And there's something really like, inspiring about that. So that's my professional background. I'll tell you a little bit of my personal background. Also, just to let you know, this will probably be about an hour, maybe a little bit longer for question and answer, but hopefully my part will be less than an hour. I can probably talk that long. So I identify as a recovered love addict. It is always there. It is always in me, but it feels like it's arrested, right? So how did that begin? I have my podcast that just came out. You can find it on my Instagram right now. I'm still kind of posting it. It's like not searchable for some reason, but I tell my full story in this, my first podcast. So I'm going to give you the abbreviated version today. Even as a little girl, I remember I was so boy crazy. I had crushes. I had a new crush every single week. And I would escape into fantasy. I was using these young boys as a sort of fantasy for an avoidance of facing my life and facing feelings that I was having come up within me. And as I got older, it sort of shifted, and it turned into chasing unavailable people, guys that did not want to be in relationships with me. And I took it as a challenge. I wanted to I thought that I could convince them to want to be with me. And then also drinking is a part of my story. And in my drinking, I got to see my own availability. I've had partners where I was not loyal. So that's also part of me and my story. And later, it evolved into sort of getting guys as trophies. I wanted to get the Hi Loch Ness. That's how I know you. I wanted the most beautiful guy because I thought that it would reflect well on me. I saw guys as trophies. So I decided to get sober. I stopped drinking alcohol when I was 24. That was 6 years ago. So you do the math. And in becoming sober, I was really faced with the reality of my life. And part of that was my love addiction. And I decided, you know what? I really need help. I need to do something differently because it is not going well for me. And so I got a dating coach. And one of the first things my dating coach told me was that I needed to be alone. I don't tell everyone that they need to do that, but I like to throw it out there because it was something I needed to do, because I was sort of a serial monogamist, always hooking up with someone, always had someone in the back burner, always texting some guy. I never had a moment where I was just alone. And so I needed to do that. So I did that for over a year. And then I sort of got back into the dating world. And my coach walked me through all the things I talk about now, which are dating red flags, unavailability of people, my anxious attachment, and trying to become more secure, trying to come to a more secure attachment style. And in this, I have my notes here because I'm having difficulty concentrating lately. It was a really long road and it was not linear. Even after I had done a lot of work, I still got into another toxic relationship. I decided to date someone that I worked with because I knew him for 2 years and we were friends. And my dating coach told me that is not a good idea, but I did it anyway, which is much like the experiences that we need to have. Just because I'm coming to you and talking to you and telling you what to do or suggesting things does not mean that you'll be able to do it. We have to come to the realization of these things on our own. So that was my story. And eventually I did get into a relationship that is a healthy relationship, a healthy partnership. We've been together for over a year. We live together. We talk about being married and, God willing, life happens, but it feels like it's going in the direction of long-term commitment, which is what I wanted. And it got really clear that that was what I wanted. So that's sort of my story, my personal story. So now we will transition to attachment styles. The reason why I talk about this is because, one, when I read, everything I'm talking about today can be found in this book. I have no affiliation with this book, but they should be paying me because I talk about it a lot. So this is the book that everything I'm talking about today, I didn't make it up. It's in this book. So at least in regard to like attachment styles and things like that. So, and there's also tons of other websites, books that talk about attachment style. This is just one variant of that. So I talk about attachment styles because I think that it is a good way for us to look at ourselves and see how we're going to show up. And it's helpful to look at the other person and see how they're going to show up and see if we are in alignment, if we're compatible, if we're going to be able to communicate effectively and have long-term commitment, if that's what we want. So I am going to give you a brief history of attachment style. I tried to give this presentation to my boyfriend yesterday and he's like, I feel like I'm in school. So I'm trying to keep it fun. I don't want it to be super boring, but it is going to be a little educational. So bear with me. Yes. So I'm going to start my slideshow. Let me see. Oh, wait. Okay. You can see this, right? You really can't, unless you chat me, I won't be able to see it. All righty. Let me see. Will someone just tell me they can see my screen so I can make sure? Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Because I might not be able to see you once I start talking. Cool. Let me play this. So this is attachment theory, the slideshow that I made. Okay, so what is it? So attachment theory began with a bunch of psychologists in the late 1960s. And the way that it started was that they were studying separation anxiety in children and the distress that they felt when they were separated from their primary caregiver. And the idea is that those foundational relationships with the caregiver in the early stages of our development can be translated in the future into our personal romantic relationships. So this is a theory. It is still being studied to this day. More recent studies are talking about how it doesn't just have to be when you're a kid. It can also be things that happen to you later in life, and your attachment styles can change. And your attachment styles are also a spectrum. It's really common that people will identify as an anxious attachment, but they'll have characteristics of avoidance as well. And we will talk about that a little bit later. None of the attachment styles are bad. There are things that an anxious attachment and an avoidant attachment could work on. The goal is sort of to become more secure, because life is just easier. Life is easier that way. And we'll get into that a little bit later as well. So I like to tell my caveman story, which is why I have my little picture of the caveman. This is a story that's in the book attached, but I just think it just feels really true to me. So they use this example of the caveman, the Neanderthal in prehistoric times. And basically they give the idea that if there were two Neanderthals that were attached and were sort of surviving together, they're more likely to survive, right? It puts them in this environment that is dangerous, because it was a different time. There's like, who knows, wild animals everywhere. And so it would make sense that that gene, the attachment gene, would sort of be would evolve, and we would still have this, right? We still have this gene. Everyone has this need to attach to our parents and to loved ones as well. Where it can kind of get us into trouble, and I think this is a really cool example as well, is that sometimes our attachment system still tells us that we are in a dangerous position, right? Just like the cavemen, when their lives are life and death, we can sometimes also feel like the situations we're in with our romantic partner is life and death when our attachment system gets activated. So I like to think of, one of the first videos I had that went viral was this video where I talked about when you get in a fight with your partner and you can't stop texting or calling them. And usually it's the anxious person that is calling and calling. And the reason why they're calling is because the avoidant person is on the other end, and they are trying to deactivate their attachment system by taking space, although they don't communicate it well most of the time. And so that is a prime example of sort of our attachment system when it gets activated. And those are just examples of how the anxious person deals with it and how the avoidant person deals with it. And we'll talk about that more as well. So I think I was supposed to move my slide, but I didn't. So this is just an example. I like this little chart over here. It says everyday activities, perceiving triggering conditions. It provokes anxiety. They seek closeness to their partner. If their partner responds negatively, it increases insecurity, anxiety, and then they get in this like loop. So I think I already talked about everything on this slide. Anxious attachment system. So I'm assuming most people that are here might identify with an anxious attachment style. I tend to attract those people because that is what I am, and that is really what I work on a lot. I do have a couple of clients that are avoidant. But so let's talk about this anxious attachment style. What does it mean? It means that you have a super sensitive attachment style. It also means that you have the unique ability to perceive when your relationship is being threatened. And we'll talk about this more, but I always like to really encourage people and tell them that it's something to listen to. Whether, we're tripping out and we think our partner is cheating on us, that may or may not be true. But I think it's important to listen to that feeling first. So any slight hint that the relationship is threatened, the anxious person's attachment system gets activated, and they can't calm down until they feel like their partner is really there for them, and that their partner gives them reassurance and helps them to feel like the relationship is safe. And I didn't talk about this, but there's this idea, one of the studies they did in the anxious in the attachment theory is called the strain situation test. And I'm not going to really talk about it because it's kind of complex. It's in the book attached, but they did a study of what happens to a child when their caregiver is removed from a room and they're left with a stranger. And these babies had different reactions. And the anxious baby's reaction was that even when their mother came back, they still couldn't settle down. They were still upset. And I just really relate to that. And I think that's a good example. So anxious people seek intimacy and closeness. They want to be close to their partner. However, they fear, because probably their past experiences, that the person they are in a relationship with is not going to be able to give them the sort of intimacy that they want. So those are sort of the two different defining characteristics of an anxious attachment. In extreme cases, such as myself, an anxious attachment style can also be sort of leading towards love addiction. For me, love addiction means that you've lost the power of control, of choice. You no longer have the power of choice. So a love addict who has an anxious attachment style would be someone who, like I described earlier, jumps from relationship to relationship. They have a really hard time being alone, and also choosing unavailable people. So protest behavior. So protest behavior is any action that tries to reestablish contact with your partner and get their attention. And oftentimes for an anxious person, this can get them into a lot of trouble. This is that example I'm using from my video where the person can't stop texting, can't stop calling. That is protest behavior. And the problem with that is that it's a means of indirect communication, right? So it could be withdrawing, the silent treatment. That's my favorite one. I'm famous for, like, when I get mad, I roll over in bed and I go to sleep. That's my protest behavior that still happens sometimes. Keeping score, acting hostile, rolling your eyes, threatening to leave. A lot of times avoidance are the ones that leave, but anxious people like to threaten to leave while in hopes of getting their person back, right? So I want your attention. I want you to tell me not to leave, but instead of communicating effectively, I'm moving through my protest behavior and trying to sort of passively aggressively get you to chase after me. It can also be making someone feel jealous. You make plans to get together with an ex for lunch, or you go out to a singles bar. So let's talk about avoidant attachment. So avoidants value their independence. And even though they have a need, just like everyone else, to form attachments, they don't seek intimacy or closeness. And they also believe that getting into a relationship, they will have a loss of independence. So because of their parents and whatever happened to them as children or in their life, they see closeness as a threat to their independence or their autonomy. I've had like 3 people this week call me and tell me this. Avoidants come on strongly at first, and then they pull away. And so that's the sending mixed signals. They send confusion. I really think this person is into me. And then little by little, they start pulling away, and I'm confused as to what happened because he was really into me 2 weeks ago. That's an avoiding characteristic. So they also have their type of protest behavior, but they deactivate. So the anxious person activates, they have activating strategies, and the avoidant needs to deactivate. The intensity is too much for them. The intensity in the relationship, the intensity coming from the anxious person is too much for them and they need to deactivate, which is why they need to get away. They need to get away to breathe, to have space, whatever. Because that gets them back to their homeostasis. And we'll talk about homeostasis, which is like ground zero, right? Another characteristic of the avoidant, if they have not done any sort of inner work or therapy, they don't think that they're the problem. They see the anxious person as their problem. They're like, I'm good, I'm independent, I've got control of my emotions, you're the problem over there. I'm just checking the chat. Okay. So another characteristic that I think is interesting of the avoidant is the phantom X. So this could be someone that really thinks about their ex in sort of a idealized light. You know, they can't get over it, even though maybe they weren't really great in the relationship. The fact is that their avoidance wants someone that is not available. They also tend to have an over romanticized idea of the one. So I was going to talk about it later, but maybe I'll bring it up now. One of my friends is an avoidant and she talks about how she really likes a guy. And then all of a sudden she'll notice that like his arms are too long for his body. And then all she can think about is his arms are too long for his body. And that's an avoidant deactivating strategy as well, to try and get away. And it's not a conscious thing, but there's this idea that, you know, we have this really idealized person and then the person in front of us is like, their arms are too long for their body, you know? So secure attachment style, that's what we're all sort of, I think I'm moving quickly. Oh, maybe not. That's sort of what we all want to be, right? That is our goal. So secure people seek intimacy and closeness, and they expect their partner to be available. I think this is really important. I don't really talk about the law of attraction. I try and like keep it in reality. I don't want to scare anyone off, but I think it's interesting that when we're talking about these attachment styles, they have these two parts. One part is how they show up, and the other part is how they're going to be perceived. So the anxious person thinks that I'm going to be too much. They're not going to be able to show up for me. And the avoidant person thinks they're going to engulf me. And the secure person thinks my partner is going to show up and be responsive and caring. And so I think there's something really interesting about that expectation. So I don't think of it as like a law of attraction, but I do think that we should embody that value and anticipate that our partner is going to be responsive and caring, which we will get to. So securely attached people are great conflict busters. My boyfriend is securely attached and he's the best person. It literally feels like we don't fight because our conversations are so like calm that they don't escalate. So that's why the secure attachment style, they can communicate effectively and they can wear their heart on their sleeve and be honest about their emotions. And there's something really powerful about that and doesn't trigger the anxious person as much. They're also not afraid of criticism. They can handle what you are saying and not take it personally, which is something that maybe the anxious person and the avoidant person needs to work on a little bit. And they're not afraid of commitment or enmeshment, which I thought was so crazy. I thought anyone would be afraid of enmeshment, right? But it's not something that the secure person really thinks about because they're not worried that the other person is going to engulf them. They're not worried about it. And they're role models. My boyfriend has been a really big role model for me in the way that he handles conflict and communicates. Because sometimes I still like to go to my protest behavior. I still get activated sometimes. And my sort of old behavior takes over. So I'm going to do a little poll at this part. Let's see. So I want to see what everyone's attachment style is. So I'm going to launch I'm launching the poll. So it should pop up for you. As expected, we have a lot of anxious people. Yeah, I did send a little quiz before. There's a lot of different places you can take a quiz if you're not sure. It looks like everyone sort of is sure about what they are, they're relating. Yeah, so we've got 75% anxious, we've got 6% avoidant and 19% secure, which is awesome. That's actually a lot. So there's one person who didn't vote. It's okay. I will close this poll. All right, the anxious avoidant trap. So for this one, I like to say, if you know, you know. This is one of those things where you just assume everyone's been in this situation, but there's probably a lot of people that'd be like, what are you talking about? That's kind of crazy. So it's a trap because you don't realize you're going into it and then you can't get out, right? When I read about this dynamic, my life changed. And there is a chart that I'm going to show you a little bit later. And when I saw that chart, I was like, holy crap, like all of my sort of illusions were just smashed in that moment. So anxious and avoidant people are attracted to each other because they confirm what they believe about themselves and what they believe in about relationships. So the avoidant believes that they're strong and independent, and they are confirmed through that relationship with the anxious person, as is their belief that someone will pull them into more intimacy than they're comfortable with, right? Because that's what the anxious person wants to do, is they seek intimacy probably more than a secure person does. And so the avoidance reality becomes true. And so this opposite is true for the anxious person. They confirm their perception that they want more reality, or they want more intimacy than the other person is available for. And also the fear that eventually their partner is going to let them down, because eventually that is what the avoidant does for the anxious person, is they let them down. So I think that's a really cool way to sort of perceive that. A lot of times in this situation, the anxious person is the one that takes responsibility. You know, usually when things get escalated, it's the anxious person's protest behavior, like in my story about texting all night. And then the next day, what happens? I feel like an idiot. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed, you know, and the anxious person starts to take responsibility for those things. And the avoidant, you know, in a way is sort of like, yeah, you need to get that figured out. So that's classic, like anxious avoidant trap. The avoidant doesn't think that they're the problem, because we've sort of worshiped this idea, which came out of the codependency movement, which I think is great. But I also think that I like attached because it gives this new idea that it's okay to want comfort and reassurance from your partner, your person that you've chosen to be with. It's okay. You know, we really put a lot of emphasis on being independent and not being fazed by someone, and sort of being unattached. And the goal is not to be unattached. The goal is to be secure in attachment, but to you know, the avoidant is not necessarily the goal. To not express your emotions is not the goal. So if you are in an anxious avoidant relationship, or you've only had anxious avoidant relationships, you start to feel like this is normal, because you don't have anything else to compare it to. You don't have a healthy relationship to compare it to. Or maybe you have had a healthy relationship and you can kind of see how this one is different. And it can be a sort of warning sign of, oh, okay, yeah, this feels off. This feels different. So it's easy for me now, being in a healthy relationship and looking back and being like, wow, if I would have known then then I would have had this. I would have been gone in a second. You know what I mean? But when we're in it, we're in it. And it's really hard to see outside and see the bigger picture because our attachment system is activated and we like the person, you know? So I have been in a situation many times, and I'm sure other people can relate, where you know that something isn't right, but you can't really get out of it. Yes, I forgot to say that there is also, there is a spectrum of attachment styles, and there is another attachment style. They have different names depending on who is writing the study about it, but there's also disorganized. I get asked a lot, like, I think I'm both anxious and avoidant. And that might be true. It's very rare. But also another example that I think people don't talk about, which I think is really interesting, is that you can be an attachment style with a coping mechanism. So I can have an anxious attachment style, but I've been burned so many times that I start to play games or withdraw because I'm trying to be like the avoidant, right? I have a coping mechanism now. But really, when you think about it, that game playing is just another example of being anxious. So yes, thank you. Forgot to touch on that. So is that all my, yes. Cool. So this is my exciting slide. So another book that I like to talk about a lot is called Facing Love Addiction. This book is utterly terrifying. It's not for everyone, you know, I think, thank you. It's not for everyone. You know, I don't necessarily think everyone is a love addict. I don't think everyone has gone to these extremes. Sometimes the attachment styles are enough to sort of describe your experience. But I really like this. This is the chart I was talking about where I saw it and I was like, holy crap. Hopefully my picture isn't blocking you, but this is the emotional cycle of the love addict and the emotional cycle of the love avoidant. And it talks about how they cycle through. And when something is happening for the love addict, something is happening for the avoidant. So another idea that I got from Facing Love Addiction that talks about another reason why the anxious and the avoidant are attracted, or the addict and the avoidant are attracted to each other, is because the addict has a conscious fear of abandonment. I know I'm afraid of abandonment, but what I don't know, it's unconscious for me, is that I'm afraid of intimacy. So I'm going to pick the avoidant unconsciously because they're not going to give me intimacy. The same is true for the opposite is true for the avoidant. The avoidant is conscious of their fear of intimacy, right? They're like, I know I'm afraid of intimacy. What they're not conscious about is their fear of abandonment, which is why in this sort of cycle, the cycle that the anxious avoidant play out, is that the anxious person is usually the person that leaves. The anxious person gets sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they cut it loose. And then all of a sudden, the avoidant's abandonment is triggered. And that's why they chase after you. And all of a sudden you're like, what the heck? I just spent all this time trying to like get you to be here, and now I'm gone, and now you're chasing after me, because the avoidance abandonment has been triggered. So yes, talked about that. Okay, cool. We're going to do one more poll. This is fun with the polls, right? Hopefully it's here. Oh, I didn't end it. Whoops. Cool. Now we're going to do the second poll. Have you experienced the anxious avoidant trap? Christine. Hi, Chris. Wow. Okay. So almost everyone has experienced this. I was going to say except my boyfriend, but maybe he did experience this a little bit. Wow. Okay. So everyone that's voted so far has experienced this. Yeah. All right. I will end this poll. I don't know if Maybe I had to share it with you. Sorry, I didn't share it with you. I'm just reading it to you. Okay, you got to see. So this is why we're all here, right? We want to become more secure. So how do we do that? We acknowledge and accept our true relationship needs. This is what I was talking about earlier, where, you know, the anxious person tends to take responsibility. And I think we need to in a kind way, hold the avoidant accountable in a sense. You know, I have a lot of people that come to me and they say, I messed it up. I messed it up. I want to try and like figure out how to get it back. Okay, wait a second though. Are you sure that that person is showing up and is aligned with your values? So I talk a lot about with people figuring out what your values are. A lot of times we pick people on accident because we're not thinking about it that don't align with our values. You know, how many times have we, like, I would assume everyone has a value if you're in a committed relationship to not be cheated on. But how many times have we been cheated on or made excuses, you know? I made a note to myself. I was like, it's okay to not want the person you're dating to like sexy girl pictures. If you know that doesn't work for you, that doesn't work for you, you know, and that's okay. And hopefully, you know, you can find someone that aligns with that value. That's just one of my examples I pulled out of nowhere. So we're going to talk about if you want to stay in your anxious avoidant relationship, a couple slides down. When I work with people one-on-one, it's not always the same as my sort of presentational general, right? These are the ideals. These are the ideals. These are the goals. But a lot of times when I'm working one-on-one, I'm not going to sit across from someone and be like, you need to get out. You know, like that's not my responsibility. And frankly, that's not how I was coached into a better life. I was allowed to sort of make my own decisions along the way. And I was allowed to work these things out for myself. And what was the most helpful was when my coach offered me things like, hey, look at your values. Oh, okay, I'll look at my values. I'll think about ideal characteristics of the person that I'm dating. You know, not like, oh, she's really telling me I should get out of this thing. And my friends are saying that this is not a good relationship. So like, I know I'm supposed to get out, but I can't get out. Why can't I get out? Because I haven't done the work to motivate me. I haven't built that hope up for something better. So recognize and rule out avoidant prospects early. This is what I was saying. If you want to be with your avoidant, be with your avoidant. We can talk about that as well. But if you are single and you are anxious, it might benefit you to try and date someone secure, which means, you know, along the way, looking for the signs of avoidance, looking for the signs of unavailability. So mindful dating. Be authentic in who you are. And you can't mess it up with the person that you're meant to be with. Also, part of mindful dating is we find out our values and our boundaries and we practice sticking to them, and that builds self-esteem, because that's another issue is our self-esteem. There is some element of if we really valued and loved ourselves, we wouldn't put up with disrespectful behavior. I said it. So another idea is the abundance principle. There's plenty of people. It's an unconscious thing for us to be with someone and to not want to leave or put up with disrespectful behavior, because we can't imagine what it's like to be with someone else. Like, it's really hard for us to put us in this position of there's someone else and I might be happier with them. That's really hard. And I don't think that we like practice doing that. Unless you're avoidant, maybe you do practice doing that. So value homeostasis. We need to value our peace of mind more than the intensity. We have disproportionate priorities of what we think love is supposed to look like. We value those first or second dates when we just meet someone and oh my gosh, they're butterflies, and he told me like he has never felt like this with anyone else before. Like, you guys don't even know each other. You're just meeting someone, and it's okay to be excited. I was totally excited when I met my boyfriend, but it flowed evenly and it kept going, like it didn't just cut off at the like 3-month mark, 6-month mark, like it's still going. And I valued my peace of mind. Yes, I had some anxious stuff come up along the way as we were dating and getting to know each other, but I was able to talk about it. I was able to bring it up to him, and he was able to reassure me. He didn't make me feel bad about my anxious stuff coming up. So for an avoidant, this would look, oh, maybe that's my next slide. Yes. Oh, thank you. Denislava says, this is so informative. Thank you so much. So this is how to become more secure for an avoidant attachment style. Sorry, I talk about anxious a lot, but we're going to talk about avoidant. Learn to identify deactivating strategies. So where are you running away from the intensity? Where are you running away from the intensity? Where are you pushing your partner away? And it's not going to be something where you're aware of it, you write it down, all of a sudden you can do it. It's going to be a practice because you're fighting against your body, you're fighting against your system. So it's going to take time and practice, and we start really small, and we don't beat ourselves up when we aren't able to do it. So start thinking of yourselves as a team, right? Because the anxious person really values their independence, their autonomy, but it is okay for there to be mutual support in a relationship. It's okay to rely on your partner in a relationship. And that's sort of a new idea too, right? The codependency movement says, rely on yourself. And there is truth to that. But from my personal experience being in my healthy relationship, we support each other. We bring things to each other. He's stressed out about work. I'm stressed out about doing my presentation. He's been with me for the past 24 hours, having to listen to me talk about how unprepared I feel or whatever. There is a mutual support there. Find a secure partner. The same goes for anxious, the same goes for avoidant. If you're avoidant and you're working on it and you find that anxious people are super triggering to you, date someone that's secure. They will be able to handle you better. The same way that a secure person is able to handle an anxious person better. Also, another thing is addiction issues. I didn't really go into this that much. That's something that they don't really talk about in Attached, but they talk about it in Facing Love Addiction, where a lot of times the avoidant searches for intensity outside of the relationship. And that can be in the form of cheating, or it can be in the form of addiction, which is why I love active alcoholics. They're so my deal. And that is a characteristic, that's that relationship where my boyfriend goes out, he's drunk, I can't get a hold of him, I'm calling him, I'm like worried. He's creating intensity outside of the relationship because he can't handle the intimacy of our relationship. So also for avoidant, start revealing yourself to a non-judgmental person in small doses. Something along the way with the avoidant, whether it was in childhood or in an early relationship, they got sort of shamed and guilted for expressing their emotions, and that's why they shove it. That's why they have a difficult time expressing them. Oh, wow. Yeah, I almost talked for a full hour. So I lost my train of thought. So you need to start revealing yourself, whether it's to a therapist or to a coach or to a friend that you know is going to be non-judgmental. You need to practice talking about your emotions in brief spurts to someone that you know is not going to, maybe it's not with your partner right away if they're anxious and they're going to make you feel bad about it. Okay. Secure principles. So start working on yourself. Read books. I can't tell you how much I've learned from books. Therapy is great. You get to talk about why you are how you are. You know, I get to talk about my mom and my dad and why I think that I'm anxious because of them. Sign up for one of my classes. I like to think of therapy as the past and coaching is the future. Coaching is the present. What can I do now? And that's what you learn how to do in my mindful dating classes and in my healthy relationship classes. We talk about all these things and we figure out how to do them. So we take little steps in the right direction, bit by bit. Like when I was talking about that chart, I saw that chart. I didn't see that chart and then all of a sudden like stop acting out. But it planted this seed in my mind that was like, oh, this is textbook what happens with most of the guys that I date. And it opened up this whole world for me in which I started to see things differently and move through the world differently. So we start really small. Even just reading a book or seeing a picture like that can be like, oh God. So secure principles. Be available, don't interfere, encourage, communicate effectively, don't play games, view yourself as responsible for your partner's well-being within reason. Wear your heart on your sleeve, be courageous and honest in your intentions, maintain focus on the problem at hand, don't make generalizations during conflict, douse the flame before it becomes a forest fire, attend to your partner's upsets before they escalate. So these are ideals, right? That's why I was saying when I coach people privately versus when I'm making a video, we talk a lot in ideals when I'm not talking specifically to someone, because these are sort of the goals, but you can't just jump there. You can't just get there. You have to start really small. And so that's why when I coach people privately, or work in a class with them, we're looking at the smaller things. We're looking at you and what you can do differently. And it's not really, we zoom in a little bit more than looking at things from the big perspective. Yes, weed out people that don't want the same thing as you do or don't respect your boundaries. Whoa, did I skip something? Effective communication helps you in choosing the right partner. Make sure your needs are met in the relationship, whether it is a brand new one or one of longstanding. Don't be afraid to express your needs, thoughts, and feelings to a partner. If we're anxiously attached, the goal is to not get to a place where we don't express these things. We might need to sort of filter things. It's okay to filter, but the goal is not to stop expressing our needs and wants and feelings. Effective communication. So I'm not really explaining to you what it is, but these are sort of the principles of what these things are. And you can use them. The first thing I said was weeding people out that don't want the same thing as you. So that's the idea of bringing up, like, on the second or third date, like, are you looking for a relationship? Or even on the apps. I think I asked my boyfriend on the app before we even met in real life. We met on Hinge. So what brings you to the app? And people hate that question, make fun of that question, but he told me right there that he wanted a relationship, or he was looking to open to a relationship. And yes, I'm so sorry. There have been situations where someone tells you they want that and then they retract it. That happens. But we sort of have to approach things that way anyway. You know, regardless of whether the other person doesn't keep up their end of the bargain, we still have to approach things in that way. Yes, I already talked about how my partner is a role model for me. He acts in a role model in the sense that he's calm. He's calm when he brings things to me. And I, in turn, have to be calm when I bring things to him as well. It doesn't get escalated, right? You set the tone for a relationship as one in which you both be honest and in which each has the sacred responsibility to look out for one another's well-being. And then I put for the avoidant, one of the things the avoidant needs to learn how to do, if they haven't learned how to do this already, is acknowledge their need for time and space and communicate it rather than put up a wall or just leave without explanation. So, you know, it makes sense that if an avoidant person is working on their effective communication and becoming more secure, they might need to say to their anxious partner or even secure partner, hey, I need a second. I need like a break from this. Would you be willing to give me an hour? Would you be willing to give me a night? Would you be willing to talk to me after work tomorrow at 1 p.m.? You know, and then the ball's in the court for the other person, whether they can show up for that or not. But I think it's different than when you just shut off your phone or don't answer your phone or don't respond to text messages. So these are the 5 principles of effective communication. Wear your heart on your sleeve. Focus on your needs. So when I come to my partner, I don't say, most of the time, I don't say, you did this. I say, I feel like I need this. I like to use this example of, I feel scared. What do you think about that? And this is mostly for like communicating with cis identifying men, because you're appealing to this is a whole other class. This is a healthy relationship class, but you're appealing to their thinking, right? We're not talking to the man about how I'm feeling because I'm talking about how I'm feeling. This is very central to sort of cisgender male, female relationship. So, but it could probably work for anybody. But how I approach my partner and how I think he approaches me as well is like, I feel, what do you think about that? And he'd be like, hey, I think we should buy a new car. How do you feel about that? And that sort of communication works really well for us. And it's like, so we've come so ingrained that it doesn't even feel like weird. If anything, I'm like, that's so cute. Like, does he remember that I like told him about that? Or like, does he just inherently do it? And we like, don't acknowledge that we're doing it. It's cute. So keep it relevant. How many times do we get upset with someone and we're like, well, you did this thing 6 months ago. You know, we need to keep it relevant about what is actually happening in this moment and be assertive and non-apologetic. You know, that's for the anxious person, or the avoidant person. I need this thing. Can you do that for me? Are you willing to show up in that way? No? Okay. I'm not going to apologize for asking to have my needs met. Judging their response. Can now see your application. What does that mean? I don't know. Effective communication. It's really important to, I'm looking at the chat. Okay. Judging their response. This is really important. And this comes up a lot in the anxious avoidant relationship when the avoidant is not working on themselves or not prepared for intimacy. When I ask for my needs to be met, does this person try to get to the bottom of my concerns? When I tell my boyfriend I'm feeling a certain way, does he try and get to the bottom of it? Do they respond to the issue at hand or do they dodge you? Do they take your concerns seriously or do they try to belittle you or make you feel foolish for raising them? Do they try to find ways to make you feel better or are they busy acting defensively? Sorry, there's a typo. Are they replying to your concerns only factually or are they also in tune with your emotional well-being? You know, like that's like, well, I came home at 5 o'clock. Okay, so you came home at 5 o'clock, but like, are you addressing how I'm feeling about it? So I want to ask you, you know, if this is relevant to you, if you feel like your partner does these things, why is this the highest value quality relationship that you're allowing yourself to participate in? If we're talking about ideals, can you imagine a relationship in which your partner shows up for you in these ways or doesn't show up in these ways, doesn't dodge you, but listens to how you're feeling? Sensitive. So securely attached people are sensitive and they're empathic and they're coherent in the way that they express their emotions to you, which is the goal, right? For both the anxious and the avoidant who need some work on that. But also part of being with someone that is securely attached is they make you feel protected. They make facing the outside world easier. And I'm going to talk about that on a couple slides later. We're almost done. I'm so sorry. I thought I was going to be way quicker. I always think I'm going to be quicker. So how to find a secure partner. Change your priorities. Value homeostasis rather than intensity. Value your peace of mind rather than confusion. Learn to enjoy being alone. If you are on that love addict scale where you are having a hard time being alone, you're choosing partners out of scarcity. You're not choosing people because they're going to make your life better. And that's a big difference. Expect to be treated with respect, dignity, and love. Easier said than done, but that's the goal. Date mindfully. Take my mindful dating class. You spot red flags early on and you treat them as deal breakers. Communicate needs from day one. Subscribe to the belief that there are many potential partners who could make you happy, and learn the principles of what a healthy relationship class looks like. Take my healthy relationships class. So this is another little chart. Perceive triggering conditions, provokes anxiety, seeks closeness to partner. Partner responds positively, reduces or eliminates anxiety. You know, so I would ask yourself that if you are in a relationship. I should have done a little poll to see who's in a relationship, who's not. It should be a goal of all of ours to be in a relationship where our partner reduces or eliminates anxiety. It's okay to want that from our partner. Yes, we need to take responsibility. Yes, you need to take my classes, but it is okay to want to be with someone that reduces or eliminates anxiety instead of makes it worse. Yes. Oh, thank you. Okay. So I want to stay with my avoidant. Okay. Okay. So you want to stay with your avoidant. Let's talk about it. Ideally, both people are working on themselves. Ideally, an avoidant can get to a place where they're like, okay, I'm willing to try and like figure this out in me, you know, not about our relationship necessarily, because they're always willing to do that. But is the avoidant willing to look at themselves? Are they willing to look at the way that they withdraw, the way that they don't effectively communicate, the way that they don't support their partner? Yeah, so I see a lot of anxious people want to take responsibility. The responsibility of fixing this anxious avoidant relationship falls on the anxious person, because they're the one that's willing to do the work, because they feel the pain the most. The avoidant, you know, feels pain, but they're stuffing it. So usually in this situation, unfortunately, the responsibility falls on the anxious person to fix the problem. And that may or may not work. Ideally, both people are working on it. So I'm going to be a little in your face. This also talks about this in the book attached. So facing love addiction will give some more exercises. And if you are in an anxious avoidant relationship and you want to stay with your avoidant, or if you're avoidant and you want to stay with your anxious person, we are going to talk about how to do that in the healthy relationships class. This is an example of how I coach differently than I teach, right? I'll tell you all day, date a secure person, date a secure person. But when I'm working one-on-one, I'm not going to tell you to date a secure person. I'm going to help you look at your relationship and figure out what is working and what is not working. What are you getting? What are you not getting? Is there a way that you can ask for your needs differently, right? Because we can start working on our secure attachment in that relationship. And one of two things will happen. You will outgrow it, it will end, or maybe there's some shifts in there. Maybe the anxious person making some adjustments will affect the relationship. Maybe the avoidant won't feel so engulfed once you start sort of taking care of your own thing. That is a possibility. Oh, I wasn't supposed to go there yet. Yes, okay, but I will propose this idea to you. this is how one of the ways that facing love addiction and attached clash is that attached is very hard on the avoidant. And it proposes this idea that you may be settling for less. By staying in an anxious avoidant relationship, you may be choosing something less rewarding. And in my personal experience, that seems to be true. These are the ways how you manage so these are ways that you choose something less. This is how you get okay. This is how you numb your needs down in a way. You admit to yourself that in some areas, your mate is never going to be an active partner. And you get to choose whether that works for you or not. Do you want an active partner? Or is it okay for you to be like, I know he's not going to be available for this. I gotta go do something somewhere else. And that happens sometimes in secure relationships. Sometimes my boyfriend's really busy with work and I got to fend for myself, and I do, but it's not chronic. You know, it's not chronic the way that it is in that situation. So learn to do things on your own that you previously expected your partner to do. Sometimes your partner is just not going to show up the way that you want them to. And you get to choose whether that works for you or not. Limited togetherness versus true intimacy. That's a nice way of looking at it. You guys are together and maybe it's getting better, but there's a sense of limitedness to it. It doesn't have the expansiveness and freedom that a relationship with true intimacy would have. Because one person is compromising in areas that are near and dear to them. At least one person is compromising and is saying, I'm going to compromise my needs to stay with this person. Because that's what you're kind of doing. Sorry. I would never say that to someone one-on-one. Maybe I should, but I don't approach it that way. So hope. I like to talk about the dependency paradox, where the codependency movement talks about we really need to focus on ourselves. I'm almost done, I promise. We need to focus on ourselves. Well, we do need to focus on ourselves regardless, but we need to learn how to take care of our own needs and don't bring them to your partner, right? Sometimes the codependency movement says that. Whereas attachment theory says your partner can serve as a home base. That's where we're talking about the studies is with the little kids, with the toddlers. Their parents weren't a safe home base for them, which is where their attachment wires got all tangled up. But now, if we work on a secure attachment and we pick to date someone that's secure, our partners can be a safe base, home base for us because our attachment system is secure and calm. There is very few moments in my relationship today where my attachment system gets activated to the point where I'm like freaking out, like maybe twice in like over a year that's happened to me, which is good for me because I'm used to it happening a lot more. Because not only do our partners influence how we feel about ourselves, but also to the degree to which we believe in ourselves and whether we attempt to achieve our hopes and dreams. So my example for this is me posting my stuff on social media for everyone to see and for everyone to leave me comments. I really believe that the reason why I got the courage to do that is because I have my partner and because I feel safe enough to sort of venture out. It's like the little kid that has the safe home base and is like, okay, I'm going to tiptoe out here. I don't know if I would have done that like without my partner and the sort of experience that we've had, definitely from my coaching perspective, for me to be like, I did it. I got the healthy relationship. I know what to do. Follow me, everyone, you know, and to post my videos like that is an example for me of having the secure home base, relying on my partner, but not to the extent where it stifles me, to the point where it allows me to sort of go out into the world and be brave. So this is why I do what I do. This is why I'm a coach. I like to say there's no guarantees in life. There's no guarantees in my relationship. My boyfriend could leave me tomorrow. He could die. That's really morbid, but it's sort of true. I'm not someone that's going to sell you, you know, get married in a year. I'm not going to sell you that because I'm not God. I don't know. But what I think we need to work on is showing up as complete whole people and doing the work that is available to us. So that way we are more likely to show up healthy in our relationships and to experience this new experience, if you haven't experienced it before, of true intimacy and being bonded with someone and enjoying life with someone. My partner and I have so much fun. So like I had said earlier, it took me a long time. I was working with a coach for maybe like two, I dropped her somewhere along the way, but you know, I was doing the relationship work for about 3 years before I met my partner. I was single for over a year, and then I was sort of dating, and then I got into a 6-month thing that was really toxic. And then I took another 3 months alone, and then I started dating for another 3 months, and then I met my partner. So it's not like a get rich quick. It's going to take time to do. But in that time, what I was doing was defining my ideals, defining the signs of unavailability that I was looking for in my next partner. I kept renewing my idea of what I deserved in a relationship, right? Because even after I'd done that work, I got into this 6-month thing. It was really toxic. And it was another opportunity for me to be like, I'm done with this avoidance stuff because I'm anxious. I just couldn't do it anymore. So now I've chosen personally to date someone that is securely attached, and life is much easier and wonderful. And that is my presentation. It was a full hour. So I'm going to stop sharing if I can. Cool. So thank you everyone for listening to me. I hope it was enjoyable and not completely, hi Miriam, feeling like you were in class. I took out all the boring stuff. Yeah, so let's see, maybe like 15 minutes I can stay on. If anyone wants to pop in and ask a question, please don't troll me because I won't know how to kick you out. Okay, here's a question that I just saw it, but I'll sort of, you can type in the chat or I'll allow people to unmute. Why don't you raise your hands? How about we do that? If you're okay having your voice recorded, raise your hand. But I'll start with this from Amy. How do I know if he has an avoidant attachment style and this is worth working through, or if he's just losing interest? So there is a way that you can either, I would say, learn more. You can, in the book Attached, they have a quiz for you to take for your partner to find out what their attachment style is. But really, it's through experience, you know, looking at the other person and looking for those qualities of avoidant and sort of self-diagnosing in a way. I think at the end of the day, if you're not done, you're not done, right? So it sounds like you want to make it work. It's hard for us to find if something is worth working for. Like, we kind of come to that conclusion on our own. So I think you need more information if he's just losing interest. Yeah, those are a couple of different things. I would encourage you to have a direct communication with him about if you feel, hey, I've sort of been feeling like you're losing interest. Is that true? It can be that simple, but oftentimes we get ourselves into trouble because it comes out sideways, or it comes out when our emotions are triggered. But like, if you came the way I just said it and you were like, I'm just trying to figure out what the deal is, they don't shut down as much. Can secure and healthy relationships ultimately lead to codependence? How can you learn to be attracted to healthy people since the anxious avoidant style is addictive? Lastly, how can anxious people focus more on themselves? Yeah, so I think that it could lead to codependency, but I think that if it doesn't start out that way, I think it's less likely. There is a difference between codependence. Usually codependence has to do with immaturity, or also if someone has addiction issues. That was the original sort of definition of codependency, was I'm in a relationship with an alcoholic, right? So I'm a codependent because my partner is dependent on a substance, and I'm in the position of rescuing him or saving him, or, so that was the initial codependency definition, which I like because I've been there. But I do think that, the anxious person needs to sort of watch themselves and filter and be like, okay, am I relying on them too much? Should I, instead of volunteering to go with my partner to work, this is just an example, can I opt to stay home? Can I opt to stay home and have the day by myself? Like that's the sort of situation I think of, like choosing to still have time on your own, if that is something that you're struggling with, to sort of make sure that, okay, we're together every day, all day, watching TV, like we need to have our own lives. But I think if people are securely attached, or at least one person is securely attached, one person is working on it, you don't really find yourself in that situation too much because you guys have your own lives, right? How can you learn to be attracted to healthy people? Yeah, so I think part of it is working on yourself, doing your own work, and that sort of happens just naturally. It's not really something you have to practice. I do encourage people, like in mindful dating class, to sort of give people a shot. If someone is like a 5 out of 10 and you're just kind of like not sure if there's gonna be sparks or physical, but you're not absolutely disgusted by them, I would say give them another chance, go on another date with them. If someone is a 0 or a 1 and you're like, I cannot, then, listen to that. But I think where we want to stay away from in that is that sometimes with someone that is a bad match for us, it's like these explosive, crazy fireworks, and we're like thinking about them constantly, and like my body like wants them, I think it's safer to sort of be in a space of like, I don't know, like I think he's cute, but like my boyfriend will kill me. But I kind of felt like that at first when I saw him. Like he wasn't someone that I looked at and was like, oh my God, it's Brad Pitt, like I had a sort of moment. I hope he's not watching. I had a moment where I was like, I don't know, like I'm still getting to know this person. Like it would be so weird. Like, is it going to be weird if we like kiss each other? Like what's happening? Yes. How can an anxious person focus on themselves? Practice getting a life, like having a schedule and being busy really helped me. Someone's like, don't waste your time. I don't know what that's in reference to. I need to have a schedule. I need to know what I'm doing. I need to know, where's my career going? Am I in school? I got a dog. That dog really helped me focus on myself because he was a lot of work. He still is a lot of work. Go on dates with yourself. Be like, I'm going to take myself to the park on Tuesday for an hour, even if I have to just make myself sit there and read a book, really spending time on our own and sort of forcing ourselves if we have to. When I was single, I used to take myself to plays. I've been an actress my whole life. So I would take myself on dates to go see a play, and I would go by myself. I went to a concert by myself pre-COVID, obviously. But I learned to enjoy my own company. I was seeing a dude that said the same thing for 2 months and he is not going to change his mind. Oh, I think I missed something. This is so honest and helpful. Thank you for going over that. Thank you. I need to grab water because I'm dying. Sorry. Yeah, movie self dates. That's a great one. Did I miss anyone's questions? You can always raise your hand if you don't mind your voice being recorded, or you can type it in the chat. I'm going through them right now. No questions. Well, I hope this was helpful for everyone. I'm excited to sort of have this recorded and for people to see. I also have my podcast. I posted the link on my Instagram. For some reason, it's like not searchable. I don't know why. Any more questions? Christine, I think it's Chris. Christine has been dating herself lately and it's been amazing. Christine, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi, Gina. I'm like totally fangirling on you right now. How do we sign up for your classes?
So you can go to my website. It's www.theloveaddict.online. Also, I'm laughing because I think that I had my earphones in the whole time thinking that I was talking through them, and then you started talking and I couldn't hear. So are you still there, Christine?
I'm still here. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I got a new computer. Anyway, you can go to my website. Also, if you follow me on TikTok or Instagram, there is a oh yeah, you checked it. Thank you. There's a link tree and on my Instagram or my TikTok, and you should be able to get it from there as well. And they're actually super cheap. It's only $100, and the like usually when I do one-on-one, it's 75. So it's 75 for 1 hour. And it's even though it's just you, but the classes are really helpful because you're getting so much information. It's the mindful dating is 4 nights and the healthy relationship is 3 nights. And you're just getting like a lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah, I really appreciate like all your research and knowledge, and like especially like applying your actual lived experiences. You know, I see a therapist and like I do my own YouTubes and all that, but to find someone like my age and like I'm in my whole self-discovery journey. So getting a subject matter expert out there is like super important to me. So I can't wait to sign up for all your classes. You really know your shit, girl. I'm super excited.
Thank you so much. You're so sweet. Thank you for participating. I think there's another question over here. What's a piece of advice to getting avoidant to change and understand us better? So I think it's okay to sort of approach your avoidant and be like, hey, like I just want to tell you about this thing I'm learning about. I have an anxious attachment, if that's sort of how you identify, and say, you know, I'm learning some stuff about like how I show up, you know, and or you can even say like, it might not be the best idea, but I saw this chart about the anxious and the avoidant and it like reminded me of us, you know, like, does this resonate with you? They might not receive it well. So it's really sort of case by case. I think my instinct is to be like, you know, we can't ask them to change. We can only ask for our wants and needs and ask them if they can show up for that. And if they say no, then you're in that position where you are sort of in that position to choose whether that works for you or not. Sometimes they say yes, and then they can't follow through. And that's also for you. The ball is in your court to decide whether that works for you or not. So it's really hard to get an avoidant to change. So that's why we don't really talk about getting them to change. But I do think that once we start working on ourselves, if we do those things of like getting a life, if I start working on my protest behavior, all of a sudden things starting to lighten up a little bit with the avoidant, because I'm working on the things that are triggering to them, you know, and hopefully they be working on things that are triggering to us. They might not be, but you get to start practicing that, you know, you get to experientially walk through what the things that we're talking about. Yeah, and being understood better is, you know, hopefully I would hope that you could sort of approach them and say, you know, I learned about this thing called protest behavior and it makes a lot of sense to me. But I also learned that, you know, I start acting like that because I'm scared and I'm trying to reconnect. And so when you pull away, it really triggers me and kind of like makes it worse. Do you think there's a way that maybe we could meet halfway and compromise? Would you be willing to sort of give me an amount of time when you think you would be ready to talk again? You know, it would be helpful to me if you communicated, hey, I need an hour to like go take a walk and we can come back in an hour. That might be helpful for me. Thank you, Alex. I love your name, Alex Zane. Is it okay to hook up with others in the meantime of working on ourselves, going on dates alone and creating your own life and not getting into a serious relationship? It's up to you. This is one of those things where I tell people, you need to decide if that works for you and if you can do that. I sort of got to a place where I wasn't really wanting to hook up with people. I just wanted to like date people and get to know them. Another reason why that would be sort of maybe difficult is that I really do encourage people to, if you're not in the commitment exclusivity phase, to be talking to a couple of different people. So that's up to you. No shame or judgment, but I would just communicate to everyone sort of maybe what's happening and be physically safe. So it's really up to you. You get to decide your boundaries. And in the mindful dating class, we do talk about a dating plan. So you get to literally put down in writing, I don't feel comfortable going into someone's house until, you know, the second or third date, if that resonates with you. It could be less, it could be more. And the dating plan sort of, it's an experiment. You know, maybe you tell yourself, I'm gonna be in someone's apartment on the second date, but I'm not gonna sleep with them. And you're trying to stick to it. All of a sudden you slept with them. You're like, oh heck, I didn't stick to my boundary. I didn't stick to the thing that works for me. And maybe you feel like crap, maybe you don't. If you do feel like crap, then you can sort of be like, oh, okay, so I know that like maybe I can't go into someone's house and not sleep with them. Maybe that's something that's really hard for me. Maybe I shouldn't do that until the third date or whatever. Yeah, hookups are unfulfilling for me. Everyone is different. Everyone is different. I let everyone decide what works for them and what doesn't. The key is to make adjustments. The key is to make adjustments along the way. And mine sort of got stricter and stricter the longer I practice, but I'm also, age also matters too. Like I'm in my 30s already. So it's different when you're like 20, when you're 24, like it's really hard to be in this space where you're not willing to hook up with people yet, you know, it's just different. Is there a paper, book, or manual you would recommend for understanding avoidance better? Yeah, I think Attached and Facing Love Addiction. I can type them in here. Well, that's the first one. And then Facing Love Addiction is Pia Melody. Insecure in Love. That sounds nice. I haven't heard of that one. Yeah, so I typed them in the chat. thank you all so much. I think I'll go ahead and close it on that note, but I really appreciate everyone being here and appreciate your time and your support. And hopefully I will see all of you soon and get to work with you a little bit more. Thank you all so much. Okay. Have a good Saturday.